Oh, hey. Oh, it's actually a fog.
Are you fluent in Chinese?
I'm not. No. 7 days a week, 20 hours a day, a single source of truth. That it's a journey. So people are spending less time collecting the data and building reports and spending more time looking at the reports and the performance and being able to make those data-driven decisions.
Mark, thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you.
I know you've been in China for almost 20 years. It's a long
Yes.
time.
Yeah.
But I'm curious what happened in your life when you decided to come to China, and why did you come to China?
Basically, I left university and then went down to London, working in London, and I kind of felt like there was more to the world than the UK, and so I did a stint for a year in Silicon Valley, and I kind of got that bug of living in another country and getting to understand and see what the other cultures are like, and then I went back to London for a little bit, and then basically had a friend from university here, and he was telling me to come over, and a guy I worked in Silicon Valley with, he was in Shanghai, so they were telling, Shanghai is really interesting place. And then my mind, so I was reading papers in the UK, and I started seeing Shanghai everywhere. So I was like, okay, there's something going on in Shanghai. I need to go and have a look and see what's going on. So, yeah, came, as I was saying, my friend said, come and stay for a month. I was saying, no, I'll come and stay for a year and see what it's like. And then, came here, did the foreigner thing of teaching English to start with. And then, started getting into some of the business aspects here. And then just taking year by year. And got into renewable technologies in 2004. I was working for a Chinese hedge fund, and there a lot of investors were looking at renewables, and so I had some friends in the UK that were doing renewables, and so I was helping them to look at sort of waste to energy management systems in China to see how we could integrate that technology into the Chinese markets. So that's kind of how I got into the whole renewable energy world as well. So that was 2004.
2004.
Yeah.
So Shanghai 2004 and Shanghai 2022. What's different?
There's a lot different for sure. Like 2002, 2004. Basically, there was very few foreigners around. Especially even today. And you go into a pub, like 6 or 7 people in there. It was like cheers when you walked into a bar. Like it's like everyone would go, oh hey, kind of concept. 2002. There's a lot's happened. It's gone high, and now we're kind of in a low part of it. But definitely huge advancements. Whereas China before was kind of looking at the rest of the world and learning from the rest of the world. Now they're pretty much leading on a lot of technology aspects. Me being in sustainability, very much around, maybe not advanced on the ESG, but very much on the technology side and being able to implement renewable solutions much more effectively and efficiently than the rest of the world. So it's been very interesting to see that growth and development.
And a lot of coffee shops now.
A lot of coffee shops as well, yeah.
That's extremely important.
I remember going to, I don't know if you ever went to that coffee shop in the Forbidden City. Like Starbucks had a...
That was the first Starbucks in Forbidden City.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not
That was a big
anymore.
news.
Yeah, it was, yeah.
Long time ago.
It's a big coup for Starbucks to be able to do that.
You've been in sales for really long time in China.
Yeah.
So, based on your observations, what have changed? If the demand for foreign sales expert have changed as well?
That's okay. So a lot of the work I did in the past was very much taking the renewable technologies and selling them internationally. But with the China market, so they were, in the past, they're very much not so, wasn't so driven on this kind of technology. It's very much using China as a manufacturing base, but now, and selling internationally. And then with sort of, particularly around the solar, with a lot of the tariffs that have come in, but also with the drive to be more sustainable and cleaner air. You know, Shanghai, 2002, 2004, as you asked, you know, the air quality was really bad in those days. To now, you know, typically, I looked at the AIQ the other morning, this weekend, because we came down and saw this kind of fog, and I was like, oh wow, better check the pollution, see the pollution. It was like 87. It's like, oh, it's actually a fog. Yeah. It's not actually pollution. So things like this, where they've really kind of helped to improve the environment that we're working, you know, living and working in the country. So from a sales point of view, it's definitely shifted on renewables, definitely shifted to the local market, whereas previously it was very much just manufacturing for the international markets. So which is a huge thing. So from a foreigner point of view, that's obviously with the tariffs that have happened over the years, then the manufacturing's moved internationally as well. So there's not so much of a need and requirement for foreigners on the sales side in that sense. And then, so the foreigners that are here, they definitely have to be fluent in Chinese, and really understanding the Chinese culture, and lived in the Chinese culture for a long time to really be able to sell into the Chinese market and work with the Chinese market.
Those opportunities where you're just a foreigner, right?
Yeah.
And you have probably a good job that already gone a long time ago.
Yeah.
Are you fluent in Chinese?
I'm not. So yes. So no, I'm not fluent in Chinese. I studied in 2005, but then, as I say, I started working for these companies where I was just selling internationally, and my team all spoke fluent English. And I started off. So I've only worked for startups in my professional career, and so that one was working for a hydrogen fuel cell company, and I was working 7 days a week, 20 hours a day. It was just chaos, absolute craziness. So
yeah,
you didn't want to make a mistake speaking Chinese. So
exactly, I think this is one of the big as well kind of takeaway. I've been talking to many people as well here. So it's recommended when you come to China, spend 1 year just studying.
Yeah.
And then it's going to help you in your career, running business, working for companies, doesn't matter, a lot if you speak Chinese fluent. But once you start working, then it's hard to find time. Of course, lots of excuses, right? But it's going to be really hard to balance studying and working.
I mean, I've had friends who are, I've got friends who are fluent, and they do, but they have like a dictionary next to their laptop where they just, they're very disciplined to actually keep that learning going. And that's you're right, it's the only way to really keep that language improvements.
Absolutely. You mentioned about that you work for startups, and also you had your own startup that you have been running for almost a decade, which is really long time. Tell me more about the startup, and what are the main big learnings?
So that was a solar EPC company, where we were basically installing solar systems, turnkey solutions for solar solutions for sites. We also combined. I had a technical partner that I worked with, so I co-founded this with a CTO, and so he had all of the experience and knowledge of combining and integrating technical systems together, and then I ran the commercial side of it, and we were actually combining solar systems with battery systems and hydrogen fuel cells as well. So we had, one of the big successes we had was actually having the first telco site totally green. So instead of diesel gensets and on these telco sites in the middle of nowhere, which have huge OPEX costs, we were looking at providing very high technical systems which had very low OPEX costs. So you only needed to go and check these sites once a year as opposed to like once a month as part of these things. So it's very, particularly around Southeast Asia, all these islands and remote locations where they still need communication systems. That was where we were kind of focused on, and then we would do the odd rooftop here and there to help with the bills as well. But really kind of trying to develop our own solution for that. But it was quite an expensive system at the end of the day. So unfortunately, it didn't really. We couldn't really get it to market properly in that sense.
So what happened to that company?
I unfortunately had to fold that. My technical partner went and helped his family looking at. He moved into forestry, looking at improving, doing 3-level forestry. That's come out of these new types of. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but it's like a new way of growing forests that come out of Brazil. That's a very productive way. So using the natural environment to actually create, instead of using chemicals, to be able to create all of these better crops and systems.
Okay.
And then I basically, so I moved into sustainability and focused on sort of green building systems. And I was always even from the hydrogen fuel cell days, I was very driven on data and trying to understand and using data to be able to make decisions about systems and improvements of sites. So even with the solar systems I was always installing energy monitoring systems in first to understand, how much energy do they actually need and how to optimize those sites first before looking at actually installing the solar systems as part of that. So very much interested in using data to be able to make those decisions around sustainability and improvements.
With the vast experience in sustainability and clean energy, clean tech, China is one of the leaders in renewable energy for sure, right? So what makes it possible here in China, and what are the challenges that still need to be solved?
In renewables, I think for China they've been one of the major manufacturers for 20-30 years of things like solar panels and wind turbines. So as I mentioned earlier, it's like that's been going out into these international markets much, and now it's very much they have been doing the odd some major plants here over the years, but really now the focus is on really taking China as a lead as in the renewable sector and being a countrywide showpiece for renewables, which is phenomenal how they're doing this and the way they're doing this so aggressively. And I think that's one of the things with China, right, is it's so fast to move things and move technologies and adopt these types of concepts and really understand the benefits. Particularly around the financial element. So when there's a profit there, there's definitely the drive becomes that much faster. So solar panels. When I started looking at solar panels, they were like $4 a watt, and now it's like 20 cents a watt for these types of things. So it's crazy. It's crazy what China's been able to do to be able to drive that cost down, to be able to enable that the overall adoption of these types of technologies as well. So that's where China's really helped the renewable sector, is by driving that manufacturing cost down, and then as a showpiece, showing the rest of the world how you can actually turn a country into a renewable energy source or provider as well. So it's very interesting.
What are some challenges that still they experience?
There's not a huge interest in the planet per se, as I see it. Like, it's not really driven to improve the overall environment. That drive is not really there, and we see that with ESG right now, whereby China's one of the last countries really to bring ESG in, because it creates transparency. ESG is very much about transparency and compliance, and that's never really been a strength, which to many degrees has helped China, because they don't have all those regulations. It helps them to be able to make those changes and switch and improve much quicker than a lot of the Western countries, which have probably gone over the top on their regulations, and that's stopped a lot of. I see this with ESG right now, where time and time again we talk to clients, and they're like, "Well, it's much easier to do things like ESG here first, demonstrate how it can be done from a performance point of view, like improving the sites, creating better data collection systems here first, to then show that." Even though ESG is stronger in Europe and North America, we're actually finding that it's a lot of the multinational companies are using China as their pilot site to then be able to demonstrate how it can be done, and then use those systems in other areas of the world.
So you already started talking about the ESG, right? So we had the question for this one, but let's elaborate a little bit more. I'm just curious, because ESG is definitely a buzzword, right? And lots of people talking about it, and there are lots of companies that are trying to do something about it, right? But probably they're not sure how to do it.
Yeah, that's
that. I mean, there are lots of still questions that haven't been answered, right? So I'm just curious, how do you pitch ESG to your clients?
That it's a journey. Basically you can't do it overnight. It's an ongoing. Basically, where ESGs come from is from the investors. So this is what they've done is, in the past they used to look at ESG as, or they used to look at companies and look at their profit and losses. So investors would look at how much money the company's doing, how they're spending it, and things like this, to see the investment risk of those kind of companies. And then over the last 30 years, basically, the companies have the financial institutes have started to realize that there's actually further metrics that could be used to identify or reduce that risk level of an investment. And this is essentially the basis of ESG, right? So they've identified all these sort of metrics of what they should be looking at as a way to reduce their investment risk. And so that's where it's coming from. And so that's why when we talk to companies, very much the people that are talking about ESG is at the upper level, like the CEOs, the upper management groups, whereas the lower management, it's not a concern for them, it's not an interest in them. So it very much depends on who you're talking to, because the operators, the people on site, they're the ones collecting the data that's needed for ESG reporting, but they're not concerned about ESG as well. So when we're talking to the clients about, or talking to people about ESG, first thing is to understand where it's coming from, why the need for ESG, and it's very much, and the other element is very much that in the past ESG, it was very much people were trying to work out how to and still are, trying to work out how to calculate and understand where that data or where they can get that data from. So it was very qualitative in the data that was provided, so a lot of surveys, and now it's very much moving to quantitative data, so trying to find the factual data to be, so that you've got that transparency of, you know, what systems are using what, how they're doing things, and so you've got that traceability factor. And this is where the dreaded greenwashing word that's come up is the fact that in the past a lot of people were using holistic data, so if it wasn't being reported correctly, it couldn't be proven. And so this is why there's a big drive for now, show us that data, show us where that data is. So ESG is still developing. It's the reason why it's such a broad topic is because every company is different, every focus and priority is different, their investors want different things to invest in them. So it's about understanding what, from a company point of view, what investors you want and what's important to you as an investor or as a company, and from an investor point of view is understanding what's a priority for you to invest in a company. So, and then it's just matching those two aspects up. But it's and so that's why it's such a broad topic, because every company is different in that process.
Most of your clients are MNCs or local companies?
MNCs right now, primarily because of that push from their headquarters in in Europe and North America. But actually, as my last meeting, they were just telling me that as of next year, SOEs will have to report legally for ESG related metrics. So we should see a big growth in the SOE client base moving forward.
From the local companies?
Yeah.
So within the next, I would say, couple of years, there will be a lot of things going on, right, in that direction. And
I mean, these targets, like China's put down these targets for 2030 and 2060 that they need to achieve, and it is a journey. I mean, there's a huge amount of data that needs to be collected. So one of the terms that gets thrown around is carbon accounting, and essentially it is. It's where previously you were counting your dollars and cents, now you're actually accounting your carbon footprint. So you're counting where every piece of carbon every bit of carbon is coming from. And then where that gets very complicated is what's called scope 3, whereby it's not the carbon that you're producing on site or from the energy you're using, but actually from because you're buying that product, your supplier's carbon footprint, and then you're selling it to your buyers, their carbon footprint. So this is scope 3, where you're actually looking at all of the whole supply chain carbon footprints to get a product from that mineral in the ground to the end of its life cycle, which is a huge task to be able to really understand all of those elements.
And the last one, before I drive you to the next meeting, which is in very interesting place. I guess they definitely need to work on ESG for sure.
It's going to be an interesting one.
So now you're head of sales and ESG at Akila. Tell me more about the Akila and actually how Akila helps clients to solve ESG problems.
So Akila is a SaaS platform that basically collects and builds reports around ESG related metrics. So what we call a single source of truth. So a lot of people are doing bits and pieces around, sort of energy monitoring, then another guy's doing energy optimization, another one's doing water monitoring, water optimization, waste tracking, all of these different elements. That's very much around looking at trying to improve the performance of the buildings. And so we're focused on the buildings themselves. And so what we're doing is helping to collect the data across all of those aspects, and being able to bring that into one single platform, and then enable that to then be able to provide reporting, basic tables, graphs, and dashboards to be able to provide that real-time data of where people are at in their carbon footprint tracking. So in a nutshell. So we also have solution providers, so we can provide optimization solutions as well, so we can help. Because ESG is not just about reporting the data, it's also about improving on what you did from the year before. So, and growing that journey of improvement and that cycle of improvement as well. So we have optimization solutions, and then so it's really about digitalizing. Where we see what I talk about is 3 levels of digital twins. So the first level is very much around the 3D model of a building and being able to do technical simulations to see, life cycle analysis, carbon footprint of those buildings, and that could be from a new build, from a straightforward design, from a concept design, and tracking all of, looking at the design and understanding how you can actually improve that building from the design stage to the from the construction flow to the operational flow, actually being able to design all of that into the building at that design phase. It's a bumpy road, and then so that's the digital twin for the 3D model, and then once that building is up and running, is then being able to do the digital twin on the operational side, which is 2 parts. One is on the performance side, so the energy monitoring and optimization of the systems, and then the teams themselves, so the operational teams on site as well, improving how they operate through digitalizing all their services. And the difference is basically that the difference between digital and digitalization is digital is like you're building reports in Excel, whereas digitalization is very much around interesting place. Digitalization is very much around actually having the operators work directly into the platform, into the SaaS platform. So all of that data collection is actually being automated, and then being able to build the reports around that. So people are spending more time or less time collecting the data and building reports, and spending more time looking at the reports and the performance and being able to make those data-driven decisions.
How is trustworthy the information that they get?
Sorry?
How is trustworthy the information that they get?
Basically, because the operators or the system, so you're getting it from the meter in the platform, or you're getting it from the operator. So we have a system where you scan a QR code, and so in China we use a WeChat mini app. So then you know who did it, when they did it, and where they did it. So you have all of that transparency to create that work order. Then if they're inspecting or maintaining the site or the system, then again, that whole process. So down to that level of granularity. So it's more than most people.
It's a very complex topic, right? And I think, like you said, it's just beginning here in China, so it's going to be more and more exciting things coming up very soon, and it's really interesting to work on these challenges and help make lots of improvements for environment around us. Mark, thank you so much for sharing.
Alright.
I'm definitely look forward to more updates from Akila, and I hope I can join some of the workshops and events where you're going to be sharing more on specific topics.
Yeah.
And please like, share, comment, and we see you next time.